that's just the inevitable culmination of its growth ever since the Stone Age. And there were way stations along the way, like the Roman Empire. And now here we are, and more people are in the same boat, and they face problems, and either they will solve them together or suffer together, and possibly on a catastrophic scale.
We are entering an increasingly dangerous period of our history. Our genetic code still carries the selfish and aggressive instincts that were of survival advantage in the past. But I'm an optimist. If we are the only intelligent beings in the galaxy, we should make sure we survive and continue. If we can avoid disaster for the next 2 centuries, our species should be safe. We have made remarkable progress in the last 100 years. Our only chance of long-term survival is not to remain inward-looking on planet Earth, but to spread out into space.
One of the challenges that faces the human species is we are more and more in a position of acting like gods. This has been true for a while because we've had the ability to change the climate, for example. This is going to be even more true with genetic technologies. We're going to be able to manipulate other species and eventually ourselves. We're going to be in a position of controlling our own fate in a way that no creature has ever, in a billion years on the planet, had an opportunity to do.
I once wrote a poem in which a mad bishop said, "And man became God, became greater than God in the godhood of man." I do not see anyone living in this materialistic society as being anything like God. I don't know what God is, but in my wildest dreams, I would never conceive of God or a God as being like a modern human being in a materialistic society.
We're anything but godlike. I think the challenges are so overwhelming to all of us that we're all trying to just use whatever new tools we can to try and change the future.
Synthetic biology is a progress trap par excellence. Biologists have pointed out that these engineering approaches is all very well, and the engineers can try to treat life as though it was some sort of computer or engineering substrate. But ultimately, the microbes are going to end up laughing at them, that life doesn't work like that. I think the problems that we're seeing now, whether we're talking about hunger and massive inequity, whether we're talking about climate change or the loss of biodiversity, have been driven over the last 200 years by a system of overproduction of stuff and overconsumption of stuff. And then that's been inflated and inflated and inflated to the point where it really is not in any way reasonable. The companies and those within governments who have supported that approach are now saying that they will provide new technologies to continue that consumption of stuff, that level of production. It's just not realistic.
It's easy now to see kind of a giant social brain or planetary brain because it's in the physical form of the internet. It looks so much like a nervous system, you almost can't miss the analogy. You might say that there have always been a lot of little social brains around the planet, getting bigger, starting to form little interconnections among themselves. Now more than ever, you could say there's a unified social brain. Even if the overall arc of history is toward an expanded moral horizon, more and more people acknowledging the humanity of more and more different kinds of people, there's always the risk of backsliding, and it can be catastrophic. From a point of view of strict self-interest, it is imperative that we make further moral progress, that we get more and more people to acknowledge the humanity of one another, or it will be bad for pretty much all of them. If we don't develop what you might call the moral perspective of God, then we'll screw up the engineering part of playing God, because the actual engineering solutions depend on seeing things from the point of view of other people, ensuring that their lives don't get too bad, because if they do, it'll come back to haunt us. So, you know, kind of half of being God has just been handed to us, and then the question is whether we'll master the other half of being God, the moral half. The bad news is that the Enlightenment is sometimes hard to come by because of human nature in some cases, because, you know, we've got these kind of animal minds designed for a very different environment, facing novel problems. So the Enlightenment part is going to require some real education and reflection and self-discipline that may not come naturally.
I think what we're up against here is human nature. We have to reform ourselves, remake ourselves in a way that cuts against the grain of our inner animal nature and transcend that Ice Age hunter that all of us are if you strip off the thin layer of civilization. We always have been the initiators of this experiment. We've unleashed it, but we've never really controlled it. But now it's more likely that we're going to come to grief because of environmental problems. If we do, then that is really nature saying the experiment of civilization is a failed evolutionary experiment, that making apes smarter is a dead end. So it's up to us to prove nature wrong, in a sense, to show that we can take control of our own destinies and behave in a wise way that will ensure the continuation of the experiment of civilization.